Hi and welcome back to the channel. This is a follow-up video to last week's in which I gave you an overview of making this veneered base cabinet, and in reaction to comments on that video, this one is a complete walkthrough step by step on how to make it, complete with commentary, which was apparently sadly missing from the previous. So this video is quite a bit longer, a bit War and Peace actually, so I'll put timestamps below in the description so that you can jump straight to any bit you're particularly interested in. Hope you enjoy the video. Thanks for watching. So this is the finished size of the cabinet. It's going to be 55 centimeters, 550mm wide, 700mm, 70 centimeters tall, and it's going to be 250mm deep. That's finished size, so I'm going to cut each of my panels, rough cut them to begin with, at slightly over 560, maybe 570, 720, 270, so that I've got enough room to apply my veneer without the veneer hanging over the edge and snapping in the vacuum press as it did in the previous video. So first step, rough cut panels. Now it really doesn't matter what equipment you use to cut the panels up with. Use whatever bit of kit you've got, whatever you feel safe using, whatever's the most efficient for you. Your choice completely. So with all my panels cut, the next job is to cut the veneers to size. Remembering that the panels are oversized, so you want to cut the veneer to slightly smaller than the panels so it doesn't snap in the veneer press or whichever way you're going to glue the veneers on. Make sure you mark all of your panels so that you know which way to orientate the grain and whether you're going to have to book match or you can take that beautiful grain pattern out of the middle, which is what I'm gonna do. So my veneers 390, so if I strike a middle line 135 each side of that middle line, and that'll give me this nice grain pattern right in the middle of my shelf. Now, to cut the veneer, I'm going to line it up so it's slightly over the edge of my baseboard, which incidentally is lovely and flat and smooth so that the knife doesn't pop through any gaps or holes in the bottom, because the veneer is by definition very thin. Then I'm taking my square so that that sits on the edge of the veneer. I'm a less than a mil overhang, then a firm hold, and I've got a fresh blade in my knife, which incidentally is called a dolphin knife. It's a floor layers knife, the most comfortable knife to hold I've ever bought. And then a nice firm pressure, not too firm so that you slip. 2 cuts should get you through. That's my veneer cut to length, and now I'm going to cut it to width. Exactly the same, nice firm pressure on the knife. Remembering we're going with the grain, so just be careful you don't let the blade wander. 265. My panel's 270. Perfect. So I'll take exactly the same approach with the veneers for all the panels. So I need to join these two bits together because I can't afford to waste that much, and this is going to be a piece on the underside of the shelf, so I don't have to worry about grain matching So what I'm going to do is line up these two edges so I cut off as little as possible. I'm going to put them over there right at the edge of the baseboard so that I don't cut into the middle of the board. And I'm going to use my track saw. Yep, you heard me right. The track saw. I saw this technique on a Woodworkers Guild of America video. And I thought, what a brilliant idea. So simple, really quick, and perfect results. And then when we turn them over, we're going to have a beautiful join. And what we've got to do is stop them from moving. So I've just got ordinary masking tape, not even blue. I'll put some little pieces down to hold it in place. Making sure to pinch them together. That seam should all but disappear. And then one piece right down the length. And that'll keep it held nicely together. Make sure you cut the ends of the tape off inside of the veneer. You don't want that getting underneath and stopping it from gluing. Okay, so with all the veneers cut, we can then move on to the glue up. Now, whichever clamping method you're using, you're going to want to take the same approach with glue. Do not use too much. We are only gluing on a hyper thin piece of wood, less than 1 millimeter thick. So there's nowhere for the glue to go if you over glue it. This is one of the few situations where we do not want squeeze out. But what we've got to ensure is we've got a complete even coverage of glue everywhere. So to achieve that, I'm using one of these super duper El Cheapo sponge rollers, not a fur roller, it's a sponge. So it does absorb a certain amount, but if when you finish with it, you put it in a airtight food bag, it'll be there for next time, as long as next time isn't a decade down the road. So a good cover all over, not too thick, and no dry spots. And if you just wait for a couple of secs, the dry spots will reveal themselves. And that is looking pretty good. So I'll pop that back in my protective bag, and then I'll get my back sheet and drop that on. So as you'll see, I'm going to be using a vacuum press. Now these kits are fantastic if you're going to do any amount of veneering. Absolutely worth their weight. But if you don't have one of these, then literally all you want is another board on top and plenty of weight so that you can compress it. And the glue I'm using is Titebond 3. So it's not a pressure activated, just ordinary Titebond 3. Because I've always got it in the workshop and it works extremely well. So if you feel the need to, you can tape the veneer to the top of the board, but I don't think that's going to move anywhere. Or I'm being brave or I'm just being downright lazy. That's all in place. Now this little bit of cloth goes underneath the vacuum connector inlet outlet thing, just so that it won't seal itself to the top of the board and then make it more awkward for the air to get out. So get the bag nice and flat, and then to seal it we've literally got, a bit cheeky really, a piece of conduit and a bit of tube that sits tightly in the conduit, and that just stops any air from ingressing. Then once everything's in place, start the pump and leave it for an hour. As you can hear, the pump's not overly loud, but if you're doing this all day long, it can get a little on the annoying side. That's gonna crack, or rather snap, but it's a clean snap. And you notice I haven't put a top platen on. With veneer this flat, you can get away with one. Sorry, you can get away without one. So we're about an hour or so down the road. I'm going to take this out the bag, peel the tape off, put the other side on and pop it back in the bag again. I want to take this tape off so that if it goes back in again, it might be a little bit more difficult to peel off. As with all that pressure, the glue kind of gets impregnated into the veneer. So it's easier to do it now. This is the backboard of the cabinet, which means only one side's ever going to be seen. But I've got to veneer both sides, otherwise when the veneer dries and acclimates, it'll shrink that little bit and it'll force the MDF to go with it, because there'll be an uneven pressure on one side of the board. So if I veneer both sides, get a chance of the MDF remaining stable. Equalise the pressures. Now, I know what you're thinking, what the hell am I doing? That doesn't look like cherry. And it's not, it's some leftover maple. And I completely agree, it's a crime for this to be hidden, never to be seen. But as mentioned, it's the back of the back, so useful there, isn't it? As that's curling like that, I'm going to put a bit of tape on there so I don't catch it when I put it in the bag. Up and down. We'll leave that in there for another hour. And that's it. It's as simple and straightforward as that. First panel done. So now I'm on to the doors, and for the doors I've got this same walnut burl that I used on the base cabinet so I can get a match. And now this is a different kettle of fish to work with because it is tinder dry and more delicate than a precious princess on Princess Pleasing Day. So I need to be really, really careful. And it's quite curly, so to be honest, what I should do is use some veneer softener and press it flat and dry it out so I can stand less of a chance of cracking. But I got away with it on the base doors, so I'm gonna do my best to get away with it and be lazy again on this. Now I don't have to worry too much about the very edges because the boards are slightly oversized, and also there's going to be a frame around them. So what I need to do is to try and cut them inside the panels. So if I were to cut across there, and there, and I've got my length slightly inside. Now if I cut down that side, I can just see the edge of the panel, so I can keep a fraction inside it. Careful at the end, otherwise it'll break out. Same on this side. Let's turn that around again. So I want to make sure I get them orientated the same way. That one's going to go that way. So the glue up was the same, so I haven't bothered to record that. But I have put some tape on the edges to hold the veneer in place just while I get it in the bag, because it's a bit more wayward than the other. And this time I'm going to use a top platen. And that top platen just ensures everything goes down completely flat, even any stubborn little bubble bits. And fingers crossed there won't be any big splits in it when I take it out. So with all the veneering done, I can start sizing the panels. And my approach is going to be to find a clean side on the panels, run that down against the fence to trim off the edge, the exposed bit of MDF, and then I can flip the panel over and cut it to size. And you remember I said the size finished depth of this cabinet was going to be 250mm. So I'm going to cut my panels to 240mm. So I've got space to glue on my 10mm hardwood oak edging. Finished height of my cabinet is 700mm, but I need to put an oak edging top and bottom, otherwise I'm going to have exposed edges of MDF on show, and that would just not be cricket. So I'm going to cut the panels down to 680mm and then put an oak edging on. For the oak edging, I'm going to use up any offcuts I can find in the workshop first. The adhesive's had overnight to cure, and our next job is to trim this hardwood edging flush with the face of the veneer. So we've got to be really careful with this. Now, any trim router will do this with the bearing guided bit in it, or you could use the fence on the router. Bearing guided bit would be better, but I'm going to use this MFK 700 because it's absolutely superb for this job. Spoiler alert, this could well be the best trim router I've ever bought. Now that statement needs a video, doesn't it? And now I'll just trim the horns off, so I'm back to a nice square trimmed panel. So now that I've got the oak trim on the side panels cut to width and flush with the panel itself, I'm going to cut a rebate on the inside face of the top and bottom of each side panel, so that the top and bottom panels of the cabinet will sit into that rebate and give me a nice solid gluing area. I could use a parallel fence on my router, but I find the router table much easier. While I'm at the router table, I'm also going to cut the channel for the back panel. Now I'm going to hang my cabinet using a French cleat, so I need to recess this channel back inside the edge of the cabinet by 18mm to allow for the wall side of the French cleat. I'm going to make the frames for the doors now, so that glue up can be going off while I finish off the cabinet. And for the door frames, I've got a piece of oak that I've machined down, and it's ended up about 52mm, which is about perfect for the framing around those walnut burl panels that we made earlier. So I'm going to set my fence to about 21mm. So I've got a little bit of leeway there. My target thickness is 20mm for these pieces. I'm going to be using the router table to make a profile on the oak frames. The router bit I'm going to use is just a simple 45-degree bevel that comes to a point. There's no bearing guide on the top, and that bit will allow me to put the bevel on the inside of the frame and to cut a 45-degree groove just inside of the bevel, which gives me that really simple pattern that you saw me do on the base cabinet doors. Now, to set that lovely walnut burl panel into this oak framing, I'm going to cut rebate in the back, and I'm going to cut the rebate to 19mm wide because that's the widest router bit that I've got. 19mm is plenty wide enough for a glue-in surface. Now, the rebate's going to be exactly the same width as the panel. I'm going to take multiple passes, so it's going to come off at 3mm at a time, so I don't overload the bit. I've popped the cabinet together here on the bench so that I'm marked to take off this very end piece of the hardwood edging on the top and the bottom. So I've got my marking knife here. I'm just going to put a nice little line on there on each one of them so that I can see exactly where I need to cut. I'm just going to give myself a shoulder line to cut to on the vertical, front and back. Then with your saw of choice, mine is currently this Suzuki, which is lovely. Cut just inside the line so that you leave yourself enough room to chisel back, making sure to cut nice and straight. And not go too far. With a nice sharp chisel, then knock off that end. Then we can use that knife line to get our chisel in. And we can follow that shoulder line all the way down. Get a nice clean cut. Of course, the true beauty of the dry assembly is not only do you get to find out whether it actually fits together or not, but you also get to find out how awkward it is to assemble. And what you need in the way of clamps. So it's truly invaluable. To cut the oak for the door panels, I'm going to use my miter saw with a stop set up so that I can guarantee all the pieces are exactly the same size. For the height, I'm going to take the height of the cabinet minus 2mm, and I'm going to take the width of the cabinet minus 2mm, which will be a mil off of each door. So I've got that nice gap to match the doors on the base cabinet. Then once I've got the miters cut for the glue up, I'm going to use masking tape to keep everything in alignment. And then I'll use some careful clamping just to keep everything nice and tight. So when you're doing this, remember not only to focus on getting the miters to close up, but also keeping all the pieces flat onto your wasteboard, whatever you've got that you're gluing up on, because you don't want to introduce a twist at this stage. And then gentle bit of clamping on the corner. And that is about as good as it's going to get. So I've popped my frames out of the clamps and given them a little light sanding. And now I'm looking at orientating my panels and trimming them to fit in the bags. On my base cabinet, I've got these two swirls on the doors at the top. So on the wall cabinet, I'm going to put these at the bottom, and then I've got kind of a matching thing going on. And now I'm just going to trim these down so that they slot in the back. Kind of like that. Making sure to get glue on both the face and the edge of the rebate. And also trying to keep it back from the very edges just a bit to minimise squeeze out. So pop the doors out of the clamps, and now I'm going to deal with these couple of little gaps I've got in the veneer and I'm going to use this fantastic filler made by Osmo, water-based. They make it in various different colours. I bought this from Axminster, I believe, but you can get it in Amazon. I'll see if I can find a link and put it in the description for you. But it is absolutely brilliant. It sands really easily. And that'll do. It's a little lighter than the rest, but by the time the finish is on there, that's going to blend in with such a multicoloured piece. I'm happy with that. So on to handles then. This is the way I want the doors to be when they're installed on the cabinet, with these two swirls at the bottom and facing each other, so it looks like I've book matched, which means these are the hinge sides. So I'm gonna do this, just put a little H on there to make sure I don't cock it up. So when you come to do the hinges, you need to take the measurements from the manufacturer's guide. I'm not using any fancy systems for this. I'm just going to use a vertical drill press, and I'm aligning the door with the bottom of the cabinet, so I've got a little gap at the top, which I don't actually need, but I do that out of force of habit for when I'm doing a base cabinet and there's a countertop above it. So I'm just transferring the lines across so they're in exactly the same place. So to sink the hinges, I'm just using this vertical drill press. So I've got parallel fence set up on it so that the very front of the hinge is 5mm back from the front of the door. Now make sure you check the manufacturer's spec on the hinges that you've got for your cabinets, because all of these settings are specific to the hinge. So last job before I can glue up the cabinet is the shelf peg holes. I'm not going to use the LR32 system for this because I figure most people don't have it. So we're going to do it manually. And what I've done is set a couple of dogs there, a couple of dog clamps, so I can ensure these two boards are perfectly aligned. For my shelf peg holes, I'm coming in 30mm from the back, 40mm from the front, because the shelf's going to be 10mm shy of that front hardwood edging. And this is the bottom of the cabinet, so I'm going to start here, and I've marked these two start points in exactly the same place on both cabinets. And what I've done is taken a slide-in square so that I can ensure they're in perfect place on both cabinets. So I've got my start points here. I'm not worried about up there, just my start points down here. So I can unclamp these. So I've got a centre line here, and I've got another centre line both sides there. So I can make sure that is perfectly aligned there. And this one I only need to do the once because I've got my parallel fence set. Now the beauty with this drill press is this little plug here, which screws down through and gives me a perfect 32mm spacing, so I can just focus on getting that first hole in the right place, and then that in will give me the spacing for the rest, and I'll get plenty of flexibility of where to put the shelf. I've sanded the inside of the cabinet completely, so it's ready for finish. And now it's glue up time, which is gonna take a while. So no more talking, and cue super fast mode. I've popped the cabinet out of the clamps, given it a good sanding all over, and sanded the doors as well. I've got 2 jobs left to do. Put a handle on the bottom edge of the doors, and for that I'm going to use this CMT finger pull bit. And then once that's done, a wee bevel around the outside of the face of the doors, and then it's time for the finish. And exactly the same as with the base cabinet, I'm going to be using this Baratine's Hardwax Oil. Because I think it is superb.